Today we're going to be sewing our fabric pieces together in order to create a three-dimensional soft sculpture. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to gather up my front piece and the back piece of my soft sculpture. I'm also going to gather any pieces that I want to add in addition. So for example, if you want your monster to have hair, you could cut out some hair shapes. I thought that this creation, this monster would look really good with some little arms. So I'm going to kind of test out my shapes and see how they look. Just tuck my arm inside here. That looks pretty cute. You can even kind of move them around if you want. I think I like them straight. Tuck the hair in, see how it looks. All right, now when you have decided how you want your monster to look, it's time to sew all these pieces together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the front piece. And this next step is actually kind of weird. I'm not going to leave my shapes sticking out like this. You actually have to fold them inside like so. Fold it in. And then fold this in too. I'm going to line up each shape with the edge of the back piece of my soft sculpture. So don't have it sticking out like that. Just line it up right with the edge. Now, I know that seems kind of strange, but in just a second it will all make sense. Now I'm going to take the front piece of my monster, and another weird step. We're not going to leave it on top so that the front of it shows. I'm actually going to flip it over so that all of my applique details go on the inside. And I'm going to line it up so that my front piece and my back piece match as good as possible. Now I'm going to take some pins, and I'm going to use the pins to kind of hold these together so that they don't wiggle around while I sew. A really good idea is to add the pins wherever you have an extra detail to make sure that that little piece stays together too. So I'm going to push that pin down and bend it so I can push it back up. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side that has the arm. Push it down. And I'll do one up where I have hair too, if I have enough pins for that. All right, so now I can't see any arms or hair or even a face, but that's okay. We want it all inside out like this when we begin to sew, and it will all make sense in just a second. Now, once you have your needle threaded, what you're going to do is you're going to be sewing a stitch around the perimeter of your soft sculpture, so just around the edge. I recommend leaving about a 1/4 inch, maybe about half a finger, of space between your stitches and the edge of your creature. So I highly recommend that you start on the side of your monster or on the bottom, somewhere where you don't have any fancy shapes like hair or arms or ears, and all monsters are different, so you're going to have to choose the best place that works for you. I think that I'm going to choose the bottom, and I'm not going to start in a corner. I'm going to start kind of somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to go in about a 1/4 inch, put my needle through, pull it all the way, and then come up again from the bottom. I'm just going to go up, down, up, down. Now this step is going to take me a while because I have to go all the way around the perimeter, but just keep on going, making your small straight stitches just like you did for your applique on the front of your soft sculpture. Now I've got to kind of a tricky spot on my sewing. I've reached the arm that I tucked inside of my two pieces here. So whenever you are sewing one of these extra little pieces, you have to make sure that your needle is going through all 3 pieces of fabric at once. The back, the middle, and the front. So I'm just going to very carefully keep on going with my stitching, but make sure that my needle is also pushing through all 3 pieces. If you don't get all 3 pieces, your details are going to fall out of your sculpture. So I've now finished sewing all the way around the perimeter of my soft sculpture. I stopped my sewing right here and tied it off, so I have just a little bit of space, maybe 2 or 3 inches in between where I started and where I stopped. Now, I know that this is kind of a long way to sew all the way around the edge, but don't start making your stitches bigger just so that you can get done faster. If your stitches get big, your stuffing is going to start coming out from between your stitches once you stuff your sculpture. So keep those stitches tiny. Now with this empty space, I'm going to flip my sculpture right side out again, because it's kind of inside out right now. All the good details and stuff are on the inside. So being very, very gentle, I'm going to start working that through. And when I flip it right side out again, all my applique and details are going to show. There's my arms that I stitched in, the hair, of course the eyes and the mouth. And you're going to have to spend a little extra time poking out the corners. And if you have something like ears at the top like I do, you might have to use a pencil to kind of get those areas poked out. And there you have your sculpture ready to be stuffed. Now when you get your stuffing, you're going to get, just like 1 handful to start with. And this is kind of a tricky process because you have to kind of take your time. You kind of add little bit by little bit of stuffing. And you don't want it to be stuffed as full as he can absolutely be stuffed. You kind of just want enough stuffing in there to where everything is like puffed up and 3-dimensional without it being jam-packed full. You can also use your pencil to kind of poke a little bit of stuffing into any ears or arms or legs that you might have on your sculpture. So just keep kind of working with this part until he's gently stuffed and 3-dimensional. Now that my sculpture's stuffed, I have the task of closing up this hole at the bottom. Now basically your goal for this part is to try to make this seam look just like the other seams that go around the edge of your monster. So it's a little bit of a challenge, but just do the best you can. I'm going to sort of fold these 2 pieces of fabric just a little bit so that when I pin and stitch them together, it kind of matches the rest of the bottom. See how I folded it in so that it would line up with the rest? We kind of want this to try to just blend in. So I think that actually looks pretty good the way I've got it folded. So I'm going to use a pin to keep that together. And then I'm going to take a newly threaded needle and make some very teeny little tiny stitches that are going to close up this hole. So these stitches are going to show just a little bit more than our other stitches because they're not going to be tucked on the inside. So you want to make sure that you keep them small and neat. So I'm just going to put that knot on the back side, and then I'm just going to go down, and up. Down and up. Just all the way along the length of that little open space until the hole is sealed up. So now I've sewn all the way across the bottom. You can barely see my little tiny stitches on the back, and I tied a second knot at the end of my stitches. So now I can remove my pin and kind of massage that stuffing out so that it fills up the bottom part too. And then my sculpture is complete. I've sealed up that hole so that the stuffing can't come out. If I want to, I can trim off any little extra threads that I see, and then your work is done with your soft sculpture.